Okay, we are on
Live.
YouTube, live on YouTube.
Okay,
Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Zoning and Land Use Committee, and I'm Stephanie Simone Mahaney, the chair. This evening, we're going to be hearing from the Department of City Planning, which will present info regarding the upcoming text amendment for the City of Yes Economic Opportunity. This is a hybrid meeting. The Zoning and Land Use Committee is split between the district office here and also on Zoom. And the members from the Department of City Planning are Lucia Capuccio, Lucia Marquez Reagan, and David Weisglass. Welcome and thank you. Lucia?
Yes, thank you so much. First off, I just want to apologize again. I was having technical difficulties, so that's why I'm on my phone. But my colleagues are going to share the PowerPoint. We just have a 5-minute quick overview, and then the point of this meeting is really to come out pre-referral, meaning before this text amendment gets certified and goes out to the community boards, and really just to hear from you all, and if there are members online or in person who want to just give us some quick feedback and have questions, that we will then come back post-referral, probably in November, and then we can kind of get ahead of the game and just answer your questions more up front. And this is something that we've kind of learned after going through carbon neutrality, which we went through over the summer. And it's really just to get more feedback earlier. So that's the point of this quick presentation. And then we really would just love to hear feedback and questions from you all. So I'm going to see if David or Lucia can pull up this PowerPoint. Which is it up? Because I don't see it on my phone.
No, I can do it, Lucia, unless you wanna pull it. Hold on just a second. Whoop, I think I have the wrong one. Hold on one more time. Okay. Oh, I do have the right one up. Okay, sorry. Best laid plans. Okay. Let me figure out how to do this again. I always get so confused. Stop video, share my screen. I'm having trouble. Hold on, am I missing the? Here we go. Share the screen. And I have it here. And then there should be a way for me to get full screen on this. Right?
Yeah.
All right. I always need to remember which one to press.
I think I can see it if everyone else can see it.
Is that full screen for everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, we're good.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right. Just let me know where to switch it, Lucia.
Okay. I think I already went over the goals of this short presentation, so we can go ahead. And thank you again to everyone. I just want to apologize again for the technical difficulties, but it looks like we're ready to go. So thanks for bearing with us. Okay, so as I mentioned, so this is the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity text amendment that we'll be talking about tonight. It's scheduled to begin public review at, it's still to be scheduled, but we're looking at the end of October or early November. And it's the second in a sequence of citywide reforms to our zoning resolution. So as I mentioned before, and as you're well aware, City of Yes for carbon neutrality was previously voted on by the board this summer. It was approved with conditions by CB10, and it's currently in public review at the City Council, which is exciting. And the next text amendment will be the City of Yes for housing opportunity, which is the administration's citywide approach to our city's housing crisis that's going to aim to expand and diversify the housing supply and ensure that every neighborhood is doing its part to meet the housing needs of the city. So that proposal is expected to start public review next spring. And there is the first virtual info session on that text amendment will be tomorrow night at 7. And I believe the board is aware of that. We sent out communications on it, but I'm happy to share that link later tonight and follow up with Josephine if folks don't have that link. But tonight, David, you can go to the next slide, please. But tonight we're going to be talking about economic opportunity. So the purpose of this text amendment is to address the longstanding zoning issues that businesses have faced that became even more visible during COVID. So for this amendment, DCP did outreach to businesses and BIDs, or business improvement district groups. And we confirmed that businesses struggle to understand what's allowed by zoning, to know where they can locate, to know what kinds of businesses can occupy spaces. And we heard a lot more too about different challenges that businesses have faced. So this proposal is working to address the zoning that was written, as you know, over 60 years ago in many cases for the 1961 zoning resolution, and that we feel need to be updated to, modern day zoning standards. So next slide, David. So this amendment has 4 main goals. Is to allow more businesses to locate near their customers by expanding where businesses can locate. Is to support businesses and an industry growth by removing specific impediments for businesses to thrive. It's to foster vibrant neighborhoods by activating our commercial streets and increasing access to local businesses and services. And lastly, it's to give businesses more clarity and predictability with the zoning resolution itself by modernizing our zoning rules. Next slide, please. So these are the proposals that foster that first goal that we talked about of expanding options for businesses to locate. So as I said, I'm doing a very high level overview on these. We're happy to talk about them more, but I'm just gonna kind of go through them and then open up the floor. So for this goal, we're looking at ground floor uses, and that means allowing more businesses that provide neighborhood services on the ground floor. We're looking at updating use rules to make it easier for businesses to open in neighborhoods that have similar zoning districts. For example, a lot of neighborhoods will have a C1 district. A lot of streets will have a C1 district on one side of the street and a C2 on the other side of the street. We're looking at allowing small scale and clean manufacturing businesses in commercial areas. We're looking at making it easier for different types of businesses to use upper floors. And we're looking at new loft style districts, including zoning tools for future development of job intensive buildings. And next slide, please. So our second goal is supporting growing industries. And to achieve this goal, we're looking at the following proposals. We're looking at allowing regulated licensed labs to expand where they can locate so they can be near hospitals and universities. We're looking at creating pathways to make it easier to build new buildings such as film studios. We're looking at removing zoning restrictions for businesses to legally allow dancing and live comedy shows. We're looking at simplifying and modernizing how zoning defines amusements, such as arcades and entertainment centers. For casinos, we're looking at potentially enabling state licensure of casinos. Obviously, it's a state process, but we're anticipating that there will be changes to that in licenses for the city. And then we're looking at urban architecture and clarifying that businesses can have indoor agriculture in commercial areas. Next slide, please. For our third goal of fostering vibrant neighborhoods, these are the proposals that we are looking at. We're looking at reactivating vacant storefronts and allowing those closed storefronts in residential areas to reopen. We're looking at creating a process to allow for new bodegas and other locally serving storefronts. We're looking at expanding the types of businesses that New Yorkers can have in their homes. We're looking at updating our streetscape rules and in some forms modernizing and making them more standard, to encourage vibrancy in different commercial streets. And then we're also looking at encouraging safe and sustainable delivery services for micro distribution centers. Next slide, please. And lastly, our fourth goal and last goal is to provide clarity and predictability for businesses. So to foster that goal, we're looking at updating and modernizing our use definitions. As I said, as you know, the resolution's from 1961, so there's a lot of outdated use terminology, and we're looking to, kind of standardize and modernize those uses. And lastly, we're looking at loading docks and allowing older buildings to adapt over time by not mandating unnecessary additional loading docks. Next slide, please. So this is just an overview. I would love to just open the floor. we kept this very high level on purpose, as I mentioned. We'd really love to hear kind of, your gut reactions to this amendment, kind of your pressure or pain points per se, like what things are jumping out at you that you would like more information on, you think will, be especially, relevant to your district, and kind of, what are the things that you think will be concerns for the community, or even things that you're excited about, that you would love more information on. So thank you. We do have, as I mentioned, David and Lucia. Lucia has been our Brooklyn office liaison for this text amendment. So she's had a lot of, in-depth conversations on this. So if she doesn't have the answer, she can also bring it back to the central team here. So we'd really just like to hear from you, and hopefully we can help answer questions tonight, but also we're also here to just take that back so that when we come back post referral in November, most likely, we can have those answers for you more upfront and in a way that is more accessible for you than we did on the last text amendment.
Thank you, Lucia. Before I turn it over to the committee for questions, I'd just like one clarification, please. Are all these proposals intended to be used in the C1 and C2 districts? CB10 has mostly C1 and C2 districts, and so would all of these proposals apply? I mean, I could see where number 18 may not, but is the intent to implement all of these in this area?
No. So certain things will be allowed in C1 and C2, but a lot of these, like in terms of like amusements and like certain like nightlife and manufacturing, will not be in C1 and C2 per se. So they might be like, some of these are more geared towards like higher density districts or areas. So this is for the proposals you see here will be citywide, but some of them will not be applicable to C1 and C2. And Lucia, is that right? I just want to make sure.
Yes, yeah. And some of these proposals, as it is citywide and we're looking to address a lot of different areas, will actually, some of them might not even apply to any of the districts. We're actually working on a set of maps that will be, available to visually see where some of these proposals will apply in CB10.
And that will be clear in the text amendment when it is changed?
Yes, yeah. And as Lucia's mentioned, this is extremely high overview, and yeah, much more detail.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's.
I
just wanted to thanks for mentioning that, because that's something that we're excited about for this text amendment. They are working, as Lucia said, on applicability maps. So when we come back out post referral to CB10, we should have maps that you can clearly see where these will be relevant. So that's something that's exciting. So thank you.
Okay, is that on the zola.planning site, or will it be?
No, those will be, are those going to be interactive, Lucia? Or I think we might have them for the PowerPoints that we have, but
yeah, and I mean, you could in theory go on Zola and kind of, these will have, this will be applicable in these districts, and you could go on Zola and, look at the district yourself, but we've created kind of a more accessible set of maps that show it better than just pulling up all the districts on Zola.
Okay, great, thank you. If we could hear then from the committee, if anyone has any questions.
So we have Ann Fludico, Doris, and Steve.
Is it okay to go to?
Yes, I'm gonna stop the share so we can see everyone.
Thank you,
That's
Josephine.
There we go.
Thank you. Doris?
Oh, I think Ann was first.
Oh,
Anyway,
Yes, but my Cliff Notes were just taken off the screen. So let me go back to some of the photos I took. I have to be frank, I have deep concerns about many of the items going on here, starting with what I consider the most egregious, and that's the increase of nightlife and what is now called common sense dancing, The first submission that we saw didn't have common sense dancing. It was just dancing. But, you know, dancing goes very quickly from common sense dancing to a loud situation. Additionally, I know we want to grow businesses, but arcades and amusements is another use that I think is less than compatible with a residential apartments, even potentially above the level of the very same building. And casinos, is another example of such a thing. I have questions and concerns about the scientific experiments in someone's back room. We have no control over it. And I would venture to say that the City Planning Commission and the Building Department, who will do the day-to-day frontline work, know nothing about chemicals and potential harms, as well as the upper floors being commercial. I think that is a very slippery slope. I can envision many situations, such as the wonderful citizens that are pictured in your slides, with clean, small scale production and upper floor commercial uses. But by and large, I'm not in favor. I could go on, but I'll give my colleagues a chance to join in.
Was Doris next?
Yes, Doris is next.
Doris,
Oh.
please.
Okay, thank you. City Planning did a presentation a few weeks ago that was open to everyone, and there were many Brooklyn residents. And have you reviewed all their comments? Because I would say they were all pretty much the same. These proposals do not help the neighbors. They may help businesses, but they do not help the neighbors. And these were residents of areas that, like Bay Ridge, have a commercial overlay in a residential district. And also in that presentation, you said that you were going to combine the use groups. There are many use groups, and some of them are archaic, and some of them, they do need updating, but we can't proceed with that without knowing what use groups you are planning to combine and how that will impact our community. And the use of upper floors, I think, is disconcerting and also inconsistent with the Department of City Planning and the Mayor's City of Yes to create more housing by using in a commercial overlay in a C1 and C2. You are taking away apartments, and that is inconsistent with the overall goals for increasing housing, and also to allow a store, a business to open in a residential area within so many feet of a corner will have a huge impact on a local community. And you don't show those pictures or the impact. And I was at a presentation quite a while ago that you did where you had a lot more details, and you showed a bakery on Court Street that's been there 100 years. And you said they need to expand to allow for more to be distribution. So you would be changing a local business that services its community to a distribution center, which has a huge impact as in a major change to the community. So I think that needs to be worked out. And you also said that you allow agriculture, and some of that agriculture could allow marijuana production in commercial overlays. So I think there are a lot of concerns, and I think there are a lot of details that are missing that we must have before we proceed. Thank you. Oh, and another member of our community board was on the meeting, and she said very aptly that this is a one-size-fits-all, and that's not how the city works, and that's not how our communities work. And I think the Department of City Planning can work with specific issues in specific areas and not just do a blanket, here's what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. Jane Marie?
Thank you. I just wanted to echo some of what's been said before. So in looking at the goals that you had presented, it was in really goal 2 for support growing industries, where I feel it's really been that some of those items were really in conflict to what we've heard from neighbors and residents within Community Board 10, because a lot of what we hear about on the community board and in our community board meetings are quality of life issues, particularly around noise complaints, businesses that are operating late. So when you look at, when I look at goal number 2, where, you know, again, as I believe Ann had brought up and Doris as well, about the nightlife particularly, and how this would really mesh within a residential community. One of the other topics that was amusements, casinos, and, you know, again, where does, you know, I understand not everything may be slated for every neighborhood, but these are things that would affect the quality of life and the type of complaints that we've heard as a board about what concerns our neighbors and how these businesses would operate in a residential area. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in as well as district manager. Here on the front lines, we often hear a lot from our residents. During the presentation, you had mentioned that the 1961 zoning resolution really does need updating. But I think as district manager, I keep in mind all the time that our building stock here in Community Board 10 is pre-war. You know, most of our buildings are, you know, within the commercial overlays were built at the turn of the century, you know, between 1905 and 1935. So with our nightlife establishments, some of our C1 districts that currently prohibit cabarets is really for good reason. And that is quality of life of the immediate residential community, which the C1 overlays do support. As far as over the years, some of the different uses that have existed within the C1, sometimes wholesale operators have attempted to open up businesses contrary to zoning, like wholesale you know, meat supplies or wholesale bakery supplies. And some are not too impactful, but others bring a lot of truck traffic to the corridor. And it does impact the other businesses. If you have 10 or 12 trucks lining up for a delivery, you know, to pick up goods from that storefront, the other businesses are impacted because they lose curb, you know, access, whether it's for their customers or their own deliveries. It does change the business streetscape. And the final thing I just wanted to comment upon is the second floor use. During the citywide text amendment for physical culture establishments, there was a provision there to add a second floor use. And we have had 2 apartments converted to physical culture establishments, but unlicensed, hence were adult establishments. And we have had complaints from those residents. In fact, we had one serious crime of a rape in one of those second floor stories. And my reason for bringing this up is when you change the second floor that was residential, there are other residential units, and it does impact those neighbors. Because when you have customers who are coming in at all hours of the day and night, it changes the residential landscape of the building. And again, C1 and C2 overlays are within residential districts. And it's those residents who oftentimes feel that their quality of life is most impacted. They are paying very high rents. And when we've had many board members have heard, we've had families in this very room who cannot sleep. Their children cannot do their homework because they're impacted by noise. Again, these buildings are built during pre-war. They don't have the sound protections. And I think that Those are important points to raise to city planning at this stage of the process.
Thank you, Josephine. Are there any other?
I'm so sorry. We're happy to listen to more. I think that if there are concerns that are echoing some of those that were elaborated upon previously, I want to give Lucia the opportunity to kind of respond to those, because I think that we might have a little bit more detail that can hopefully alleviate or quell some of those concerns. But I'll leave it to you. If you'd like to continue speaking first, that's fine. But I just want to offer the opportunity to kind of respond to some of those that were brought up initially. But I'll leave it to the board.
Then why
How
don't we
you'd like
do,
to proceed.
Lucia, if you have a response, please. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, everyone who's given us feedback so far. I think I can. I was taking notes, so apologies if I was looking down. That's what I'm doing. So I just want to hit on some of the things that I've heard so far that I definitely have answers to, and then we're taking everything back, and I'll let David and Lucia jump into. I wanted to say, I know Doris brought this up, and Anne might have too. There will, like the carbon neutrality text amendment, where we had an amended text that's sent out. When this is referred out, in a month or so, there will be an annotated text amendment that is sent, so that all the changes will be there, like in terms of use groups and everything else that we're talking about. You will see the full text, so you will be able to look through that and see everything that we're planning on doing. Obviously, everything will be transparent. So I just want to make that clear. We don't have that yet. It's still being finalized, which is why I haven't shared it with you all. But as soon as that's referred out, the board will have that annotated full text amendment. So that was the one thing I wanted to say. In terms of casinos, we understand this is a concern, for a lot of residents and boards. Because this is led through the state, this is still being worked out. It's not through the city, so we don't have more information to share. But our understanding is that there will only be a couple licenses in New York City. I know right now there's been a lot of talks about Times Square or Coney Island. I think that's right for right now, since it's not something. I don't want to use the wrong words, but I'm not certain it's something that will be like a very, large scale. It's only going to be like 1 or 2 licenses for New York City. So I don't envision that being something that will impact CB10. It's still in flux. So I just want to make that clear that we don't have more information on the casinos, but it's not something that will be like broadly, like there will be casinos all over New York City. It's going to be a very regulated, only a few licenses. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. David and Lucy, I don't know if you want to jump in on some other stuff.
Yeah, if that's okay, and Lucia obviously jump in as well. I'll put like kind of a finer point on some of this. I want to be clear. What we presented here, to be fully transparent, are some of the issues that we've identified and some of the proposals we've identified citywide, right? And citywide is the key term here. As Lucia noted, we're soon going to have applicability maps that can very clearly see, okay, I live here, here's what's going to happen in my neighborhood. Many of these proposals, including the casinos, is a really good example of one. To be quite frank, if it were up to me, casinos wouldn't even be part of this. It'd be a completely separate thing. That is just not going to happen to CB10. You can darn near quote me on that. I mean, that is about those state licenses. I think they're releasing 2, maybe 3 downstate licenses. And basically all we're doing is finding a way for those licenses where they may be. And I think the conversation now would be about Coney Island and Times Square. And I forgot the last place where we're looking, but I think those are kind of where those conversations are going. I personally would be shocked if that happens in CB10, but that's an example of something that isn't necessarily applicable here. I think I want to echo that for something like life sciences facilities, right? Those are intended to aid universities, right? And existing hospitals, medical research facilities that are in districts in which they'd like to expand some of the services that they provided. This is not kind of intended and won't be permitted in situations with overlays where somebody could just buy a storefront and start, conducting experiments. And so I know that more detail is necessary on that. And of course, we're going to provide all that detail. But I do just want to clarify that these are citywide, and we didn't just, pick and choose the ones that would be applicable to CD10, because we want you as community board members to be aware of what's happening all over the city. Some of them would only be applicable in M zones in the Bronx, for instance. Some of them would only be applicable in downtown Brooklyn or something similar. And so we will have more detail about that soon. We didn't want to jump the gun on that, but I hope that makes it clear for some of these proposals. In fact, many of them, that they won't be intended to be in a commercial overlay, very close to residents. Lucy, I'll allow you to kind of expand upon anything I might have missed.
I guess I'll stop there. I won't go for too long, but I do want to highlight and really appreciate your input on all of these proposals, and that even though they are citywide, as you also mentioned, there are some that will impact CD10. And in the proposals, we have the use group, as someone so mentioned, use groups and combining use groups. It's not a matter of combining necessarily use groups so that we allow, it's going to be using the state or the federal classifications of things and it's not as though we're, going to be suddenly expanding a massive amount of uses in an area. It's simply making it a lot easier to be able to identify what can go that has already been, written and set in stone, to make sure we can understand what exactly can go in those places. It's and I do want to also highlight that upper floor commercial space. This is mainly for higher density areas. We're thinking like downtown Brooklyn, where we have there might be a need for like a upper floor or a wish for an upper floor restaurant, and there will be like very specific regulations on lobbies. You'd have to provide a separate lobby. So it's mainly going to be for buildings that are brand new in higher density areas. And I know that it seems like, we wanted to present this in a broader way in order to kind of get these reactions and get these input and be able to share all of this information. And we're also happy to, I think the presentation that another Blue Doors mentioned happened last week. It's available on our website. You can see every single proposal in much more detail. So that is also a resource as well. So I know there's probably going to be a lot of other questions, but yeah, just a couple of answers on those proposals.
Thank you. And before we throw it back to the board, I just wanted to mention, in terms of nightlife concerns, I think this is something we've heard all around the city, and it's understandable. The zoning text it won't be changing capacity rules. So it's really just it'll be for places that have under 200 person capacity that already allow alcohol in restaurants to have the choice to have like a comedy club or dancing. Those will still be regulated outside of zoning in terms of noise complaints and, good business practices. So the State Liquor Authority will still be involved, DOB and FDNY. So those will still be regulated through the same channels now. So we're not changing, that businesses need to be good neighbors. We're just what we view as common sense kind of, regulations to make sure that, it makes more sense across the board. But we do hear your concerns, and we understand that quality of life is obviously something very important, especially for commercial strips that are abutting, residential homes. So I'll throw it back to the board now, but thank you for letting us. I just wanted to interject on some of those things that we have straight answers to right now.
When it comes to the nightlife thing, it's more than just quality of life. There are a lot of safety issues. And as it stands, our district has, there are only a few bad actors, but in those situations, just with alcohol and late hours, those have been problematic for our community. And would it be sort of an as of right issue? You're clearly saying that this would come to CB10, that it would be available in the C1 and C2 districts along our avenues here. And would there be any input from the community boards as to how to regulate it or whether or not they want it?
Lucia, do you want to jump in on this? I think it is applicable across the city, so it would be
Right,
for
exactly.
C1 and C2s, yeah. But they would have to go through the same, state liquor authority in terms of if they were bad actors, they would, be losing their liquor license, et cetera.
Lucy, I want to give you the opportunity to step in as well, but my understanding is that these would only be permitted in restaurants or facilities that are already permitted now, right? So to echo kind of what was said before, capacity under 200 persons for, I think, a restaurant or facility or something like that is permitted as we speak today. And so that is not being intended to change whatsoever. Basically, what is being proposed here is to allow people to move, is to allow people to dance a little bit. I know that doesn't quell all the concerns. Trust me, I we all live in neighborhoods too. We don't want to have loud cabarets anywhere near where we are either. And so we want to make sure that those concerns are heard and that where there is regulation applicable, that regulation is done well.
Comes down to enforcement, and that's very difficult. And that will remain a huge concern for us and for our community.
And you,
Dor-
sorry.
Steve have an order?
Yeah, Steve?
Steve?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, just a few points here I'm listening to. Number one, this whole thing about cabarets and dancing in a community like ours in Third Avenue is a Pandora's box. Once you open it, you will never get rid of this problem. It is a problem, and it is a big problem. So I really have a real problem with that. But I also have a question here. Lucia, am I saying that right, Lucia? Lucia?
Well, we have two of us have different pronunciations, but yeah, Lucia,
okay,
I'm Lucia, yeah.
Okay, Lucia. At the beginning of this, you said that that we are working on the old 1961 zoning, okay? And you said that you wanted to switch, and the exact words you used was modern day zoning standards. Is that correct? I mean, because you said modern day, okay. But my question for you is like, that implies that there's a standard for modern day zoning, so you must be using it. Is this something that is just being made up as we go along as to what the modern day standards are? Or are you working off something that actually there's standards that exist for modern day zoning?
Well, I think my point is more, when our zoning, department updates things, they're looking at examples from cities around the country and around the world, and in terms of, looking at what.
But who makes that modern day zoning? I mean, how do you define modern day zoning? I mean, because
I think that's an objective question.
I'm just going to speak a little bit. It
Go
seems
ahead,
to me when you're talking about modern day zoning standards, okay, there's no standards. This is something you're making up as you go along. There's other places that you might be looking at their things, but what makes you think that there's standards out there for zoning at this time? And if you're using that, I really object to that, because it's an implication to people that somehow our standards are outmoded because there's modern day zoning standards, and I don't get that.
I think I hear you, and I think a part of what, Lucia, to jump in, but I think one of the examples of how our zoning resolution needs an update is that there is a category for typewriter repairs in our zoning district, but we don't have like more nuanced warehousing or other type of businesses. And so what we're saying is, in a lot of different ways, we're trying to modernize our zoning rules beyond kind of we're using the federal, standards on how to define businesses to be able to then bring make it more simpler for us community members, us Department of City Planning members, business owners to know where to locate. And that's kind of one of the basis for this, but I hear you. I hear like the need for more transparency on how these were, you know,
But it's not transparency, it's language. Okay,
language.
what you're doing right now is saying that, I mean, we have zoning standards, okay, right now in our community. You're saying you want to switch to modern day zoning standards. What are you relying on for this idea that there are standards that you want us to update? I'm perfectly happy right now. Sure, there's certain things, and zoning is always changing to an extent. So I don't agree with you at all that there are not modern day zoning standards. I do believe that the standards that we have, by and large, serve our city well. And that to go out and tell people that there's something more modern, that these standards, you can't show me a book that shows you, says this is, you know, whatever year we're in right now, these are the modern day zoning standards, because that somebody puts them out and creates modern day zoning standards. The truth is that zoning has to be reactive to the zone, okay? And to just come along and just wholesale change everything is a prescription for disaster. I have a real problem with it. I'm sorry.
Understood. I appreciate that, Steve. Do you mind if I respond briefly?
No, not at all.
I agree with you. I guess if the question here would be, is there a book out there that says this is modern day zoning standards that we're following? If that's the question, the answer is you're correct. No, there's not some
Okay.
simple standard. There
But
also
then you
wasn't.
shouldn't use
But
it. Then you
Steve,
shouldn't use
Steve,
that.
you had a question. I'd like to respond to it. There also wasn't a standard in 1961. Right? That was kind of made up on the spot as well, reacting to the issues that we had at that time. And we put those standards in place, and many of those standards remain to today, and many of them are very good, and they will not be altered. However, over the years, we have to react to the problems that are there today. If there was a simple standard of best practices, then there would be no city problems at all, right? And so what we're intending to do here is, again, look at the problems and the issues that we have with small businesses surviving in New York in 2023, and try to make some changes to clarify the process for these small businesses to make sure that they can succeed without changing everything about the city experience. Now, I'm not going to say that the experience won't change. I completely understand that, and I'm not going to say it won't be minimized. I'm agreeing with you that there is no set book here, no set rule of standards, but there also wasn't that in 1961. We were reacting at the time in 1961 the same way we're reacting to the issues we had in 1987 when we introduced contextual zoning. Right. So what we're trying to do is react to the issues at the time and try to find the best path forward. That said, we will take everything that you say into account. And this is the purpose of us having us here.
Yeah, but
So
my response to that is that my objection is to the use of the terms modern day zoning standards when they don't exist. Okay, they don't exist. They didn't exist back in whenever the last time it was, or before that, right? There is no book of standards, but the language that you're using gives implication that there are standards that you're basing it on, when in reality, what you're doing is you're taking it on an ad hoc basis as we go along. And there's no person, you know, and that's what I object to the use of that terminology.
We will happily remove that terminology in future presentations.
Thank you.
Anne?
Yeah, I just want to say that although our first responsibility as community board members is certainly to advocate for what's best for our area, I want to remind you all from city planning that we are not without interest, concerns, and visions for the city at large.
Right.
A community planning board boundary is an artificial line on a map. All of these things, not so much the casino on Coney Island, but perhaps even that. These are things that we are going to be living either literally or figuratively next door to.
Right.
So please don't feel that if it's not happening in our area, that it wouldn't be a primary concern to us. And we can envision what it would be like to live in an apartment building on the corner of Court Street and Atlantic Avenue, and have businesses on the floor of your apartment. It's kind of no different. And if you're saying that restaurants could be on the second floor, and then you say that there's a separate entrance, that's a different thing. And if there were a caveat to say that non-residential uses should be permitted on upper floors with separate entrances, that's a horse of a different color. But please know that we do widen our horizons to be looking at the city of yes, not just these streets.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. And that's exactly the reason that we gave you all of the proposals, including those that may not and likely won't be applicable to CB10. So I do appreciate that. And I think that's a really good point.
Sorry, I will note that for the second floor commercial and the higher density districts, that will be a separate commercial and residential entrance and separate lobbies. So they would be separated. But I think for the lower density districts, and we'll have more details about this, the second floor commercial is more envisioned as like a doctor's office. It would not be other uses, but we'll have more information on that when we come back post referral.
Doris?
Doris, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you. I think commercial uses in apartment houses is a serious issue. It offers privacy and security issues. And I think that has to be addressed. And I mean, Josephine has mentioned the problems we've had with massage parlors and other physical equipment. Well, I forget what they're called, but basic spas and such. But we have to look at the impact that these businesses will have on the person living next door, on their security and their privacy. And I think as this was said at the meeting a few weeks ago, that your plan is premature because without details, it's very difficult to make decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. Jean Marie?
Thank you. So in addition to that point from goal 1 that Doris just mentioned again about that upper floor commercial, which has been mentioned, and all of those points from goal 2, when looking at goal 3, the fostering vibrant neighborhoods, it's not very clear about, for the home businesses, expand the types of businesses New Yorkers can have in their home. And it's also not very clear as to what the streetscape rules would be and how that is funded or is, because it says create streetscape rules to encourage vibrancy in different commercial streets. It's not really clear what that implies. Are we, closing streets to vehicular traffic? Are we having some kind of beautification process? Are we redesigning the streets? That's not really spelled out at all. So I really feel we are lacking information on those points. Thank you.
Oh yeah, if I can just respond, to the streetscape rules, we will have plenty of more detail on that once we have the annotated text. Some of the things that I can speak to that I know that they're looking at will be like ground floor transparency rules. So, like making sure that, like dark stores that you may have seen pop up, like those would not be allowed anymore, and making sure that we have like, you can see into a building that there's certain windows that are certain, amount of coverage, so you don't have like blank, walls when you're walking by. Making sure sidewalks are wide enough for strollers and people to walk down. So those are some of the rules. I'll speak more to that when I come back. We can have more detailed information on that, but it's more like those types of things. We're not looking at closing streets, like in open streets or something. That's not something that will be part of the text amendment. While I catch Yeah, if anyone
yeah.
else wants to jump in, yeah.
I'll just add to the streetscape rules. I think our intention there is mostly for clarification purposes, is my understanding, right? And Lucia, you can correct me on this as kind of our head honcho when it comes to this stuff. My understanding is it's really about clarification purposes. A lot of businesses on the ground floor are unsure about the rules, right? It's a little bit complicated to get through our ZR and actually kind of use plain language and see what the rules are. And what that does, to the point of many on CB10, is it allows, either intentionally or unintentionally, many business owners to not follow these rules, right? When there's a lack of visibility that leads to that can lead to decay of certain places in the neighborhood, or lead to a lack of visibility that plays into safety, right? We all know visibility is an important factor in safety. And so what we want to do is standardize those rules and make them simpler and clear, so that we can say to businesses, here's what you have to do. It's in very plain language. If you break these rules, that's going to be a problem, because these rules are in place to ensure vibrant commercial neighborhoods and safe commercial neighborhoods as well.
Thank you. I have comment and then some questions, actually. David, I know before you said that a lot of proposals are a reaction to the issues and trying to solve them, but ultimately, despite you're trying to clarify and modernize practices to help the survivability of businesses, I think that a lot of these proposals are undermining the original intent of the zoning regulations, particularly in the commercial overlays, where a lot of the businesses are intended to meet the needs of the residents, not to usurp their place in the community. And that's a great concern, because a lot of these proposals seem to place the priority on businesses rather than on residents. I did watch a couple of the presentations online, and there was more detail, and I understand that this was just the highlights. But even so, there wasn't a lot of information as to what type of businesses would be allowed where. For example, the corner stores. It's not very clear. Can there be theoretically 4 stores at an intersection on each corner? And now with the a proposal to have indoor agriculture, does that mean cannabis production could take place on the corner in a store in a residential neighborhood? That's one question. And then will these proposals, any of them, automatically allow an increase in FAR and greater bulk? And is there a couple of the presentations referred to discretionary processes being triggered with some of the proposals? What could you speak to that, please? And that's it. Thank you.
I think the proposal that you're referring to in terms of bulk, there is not, this is not a proposal that is going to be as of right, you're going to be able to receive more FAR. There's not a proposal in this package that has that as a part of the proposal. I think there is a proposal where upon, of course, going through the user process, they would be able to propose like bulk and form changes for like businesses that include film studios, other larger businesses of that sort, and that is something that will not is not a trying to find the it's going to be a process that's going to be discretionary. It's not as of right, if that answers that question.
I know it was mentioned over and over again, but what other businesses, what others would be able to apply for that
discretionary? Sure. That is a great question, and something that we're very happy to take back and make sure that we have a concrete list of different types of businesses that are envisioned to be able to access that proposal. So be happy to return back with those with a larger and more inclusive list.
Okay, thank you. That would be helpful.
Of course.
Any other response?
I think there are a lot of questions, and I apologize. If you could list, as I had mentioned, I hooked on to the last one to answer, but if you could repeat, unless David or Lucia want to jump in.
No, mine was one of the questions was about the corner stores, and again, no specificity as to what type of businesses would be allowed. And this is a proposal for a residential area, not even in a commercial area. So theoretically, I think the provision is that it has to be at an intersection. So there are 4 corners usually. And if so, does that mean each corner could be occupied? Again, I was thinking, could a private home be purchased and then turned into a business in a residential area? And then would indoor agriculture be permitted in that area to include cannabis production?
I can speak to the corner store. In terms of if they could, you know, make it into something else, I would assume they would have to go through a zoning map amendment change. I don't have the detailed list of what would be provided, but as Lucia said, once we have, you know, that finalized detailed list of uses, I'm sure I'll be able to tell you. From what I know right now, it would be like smaller scale, limited to 10,000 square feet or less, professional offices, retail or service uses. And that would also be through, to do this corner store proposal, you would need to get the CPC authorization. So they would need to come through DCP. So theoretically, if it was in 100 feet of an intersection, you probably could see 4 on the, you know, different corners, but that would entail either 4 separate property owners coming to the CPC or someone buying up those properties. So I won't say that's not possible. I think it would be possible, but they would need to go through the CPC to do that. So it'd be a public process. In terms of cannabis use, I don't think in terms of the agriculture, I'll have to get back to you on that, but I believe that the zoning text amendment, or let me start over. In terms of right now, I believe that, you know, cannabis dispensaries are currently allowed under use group 6. It's not, you know, that process is playing out through the state, but they're currently allowed. So I don't think there would be separate rules for cannabis. In terms of cannabis production, well, I'll have to get back to you on that. We'll have answers when we come back.
Okay, thank you.
Grow apples.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the committee? No? Okay.
Do you wanna, maybe we'll ask
Oh.
if there are any attendees from the
Yes.
public who may
Thank
have
you,
a
Jessica.
question? You can use the hand raise function and I could call upon you. Oh, I don't see any. Okay, Stephanie.
Nothing? Okay, we need to discuss or? This was primarily informational, but thank you very much for being here this evening and for presenting. Greatly appreciate the information. We of course have a lot of questions and would and do look forward to receiving those answers.
Yes, thank you so much. And I do want to reiterate, if the board will have us, which I'm sure you will, post referral, we will come back and we will be giving a more detailed presentation if allowed and interested in that. And the purpose of this is really to kind of field these questions early and to hear your feedback and concerns directly early on so that when we come back, we already know, you know, some of what you're thinking about. And I'm sure there'll be more questions. You can always reach out to me, you know, directly via email too as well, which I think Josephine has my email and she's,
Yes, I do.
and yes, go ahead.
We receive the text, the physical text upon certification, or is there a way do we get a draft in advance? Because I have to say, for carbon neutrality, receiving that text, it was very difficult to dissect the text changes, which were voluminous, for the committee in time for, you know, it was the summer we were going into the summer hiatus. So I think it is helpful, as soon as we could get as much materials as possible in some of those breakdowns, so the committee can begin really taking and delving into concerns as they apply to not only to CB10, Community District 10, but citywide. recommendations.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I'm not sure if there will be a draft text, but I can ask our zoning team. We will have that post. Yeah, we'll have the once it's certified, we'll certainly have the test, but we do hear those concerns in terms of like, it's obviously a lot to take in. So I'll ask if we can have something to share, but it's still being finalized. But if we can share it, we certainly will. If not, it will be, you know, after certification, you will receive that full text in the referral package.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
all.
much.
I also want to plug real quick the housing opportunity session tomorrow. I know it's a lot to take in when we're all in ZEO world, but housing opportunity is not going to be certified until the springtime. There's a lot of time there. We're still completing our environmental review, but that can give you an introduction because I know that's very interesting to folks. So please register if you're curious. It'll be really helpful.
One quick question, Josephine, we have on our calendar for September 28th
Yes.
for that is a different meeting than tomorrow's meeting that David was referring to, because we had one down regarding affordable housing preservation and development. That's a separate.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay. I'm sorry.
No problem, Jane Marie. I'm happy to clarify. Tomorrow's info session, it's not a CB10 presentation. This is a public Department of City Planning remote information session that anybody in the city, anybody in the world, quite frankly, is free to register and log into. And then it'll just kind of give an overview of that next text amendment that will be coming in the spring.
Okay.
But it's not CB10 specific. It's for everyone in the public who's curious.
Okay.
But there'll be opportunity to ask questions as well. All right.
You send that link?
Yeah, we'll put it here in the chat right here to register. I will do that right now. I think this is the right one. Hope that's the right one. So I hope in the chat everyone just saw that link, and that's where you can register for the info session tomorrow. And of course, we'll be back many, many, many times to CB10 to discuss in more detail how this will affect the district and other areas of the city as well. But that just gives you a little bit of a taste of what might be coming for housing opportunity. But ZEO is more time sensitive, of course, as it's certifying much sooner, or getting referred out much sooner, I should say.
Thank you for that information. And then if there are no other questions, do I have a motion to adjourn?
No, aren't we going to discuss this in?
Are we?
I thought it was information.
That's you, we could.
I mean, we can.
I think
Yes.
it's we should do that.
Okay.
Would you
I
like us
agree.
to? Would you like us to step away then? I assume.
That's fine.
That's it. Yes, if you would like to.
I mean, I don't know what the I don't know.
I
what
think we
you're looking
we should be able to go into executive session now.
Okay,
Okay.
that's
Are
fine.
we gonna excuse them for
Yes.
for the rest of that? Okay, then let's do that.
Thank you,
so
David,
much.
Lucia,
Thank you,
and
ZCP.
Lucia.
Thank you all
everyone.
very much.
Thanks for
Always
the
a pleasure.
presentation.
Thank you.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I thought it was informational. I didn't realize that we were able to make a recommendation now.
No, I
I just think,
think it should just be a post-mortem that we speak about what we saw and how we feel about it.
And the last time we did a recommendation, we divided the proposals up and everyone was asked to give input. I don't know if you want to do that, or I already have a list of questions and I can.
Yeah, that's
I
pretty
can-
much, if I can just, what I'm interested in hearing is what everybody else heard. And I'm interested in the discussion here because, I mean, I find this to be personally preposterous. And I was, personally, I was very upset about the use of that terminology that I brought up, that because it's creating a belief that somehow there are modern standards, when I personally believe that what we have is fine. That doesn't mean that we can't add things to it. That doesn't mean that we can't see that things have changed over time. But to do this entire wholesale alignment of the city, to me, is in and of itself absurd. Okay, I have no problem with saying, hey, maybe we can do this, but it has to be done piecemeal. To do it all at once and not recognize how these how these zones will interact with each other, and Community Board 10 being the best example because we have a special zone, I find to be very disturbing. When we start talking about putting things on second floors and within the residential zones, this is absolutely, in my opinion, it could be the death knell of the city. People may think that I'm exaggerating. I don't think I am, and I just really look around it. The big thing that we keep talking about is that, particularly when we talk about Community Board 10, we have zones that are on here, 3rd Avenue and 5th Avenue and all that kind of stuff. But these zones all exist in a residential community. And it was created, these were really created well to make sure that we preserve the residential character of our community. And I have no idea where it goes if this thing gets passed. And, we will now have commercial stuff in the residences and residential stuff in the commercial. Where do we make these separations? How do we have a place where we don't have people that are dancing on top of our heads if we're in an apartment house? I just don't know where it goes, and I don't know if it could ever be done in the short period of time that they're trying to create this in order to create the city of yes. That's my feeling.
Steve, if they do it the piecemeal way, then that doesn't make sense either. It's better to do it as one and propose it and everybody discuss it and decide what's good or bad, than what you're saying is do it piecemeal. Well, we need this change, we'll change that. But every time you make a change, it has other effects. So to have it as a unified concept makes more sense to me anyway.
Disagree.
I disagree also. But I have to tell you, this is the third presentation I've seen on this. And every time they take more and more details out of the presentation.
Correct.
They want to show us less and less each time. And there's a reason for that. And it makes
This sounds like a huge giveaway to the developers in New York City and the area, obviously, not just Manhattan, to spur economic growth. And while I want to spur economic growth as much as I can too, I think this is a huge black Pandora's box that no one knows what we're getting. We know none of this. I looked at this when I watched, and I'm so glad you all spoke and you all had really valid concerns. But my one concern was when reading that big, beautiful, all the dot points, I said, looks like a